and welcome to this week's video. Now, for those of you who have watched my channel recently, you kind of failed to notice that I've bought myself one of these guitars, an EVH Wolfgang Special, because I haven't stopped going on about it. Now, because I've owned this guitar 6 weeks, I thought it might be an idea to do another review. I did a review when I first got it, but having played it and owned it and fiddled about with it for 6 weeks, I thought I might be able to do a different type of review that might be useful if you're thinking of getting one. So without further ado, I'm going to do a track that I've played on this guitar, then I shall get on with the review. Now, the reason I've decided to do this review is I think when you first get a bit of gear, you either love it or hate it when you immediately get it. And because I've had this 6 weeks, I think I'm probably able to do a slightly more nuanced review, having owned the guitar and played it now quite a bit for the last 6 weeks. Now, I've used it on several gigs, as if you look back over my last few videos, you'll see I've put up some gig footage of me playing it. Now, it hasn't become my main guitar, but it has become my main guitar at home. I play it every day for quite a long time now, and this is something that I haven't done for a long time. Not since lockdown. I had a bit of a resurgence in enthusiasm for practicing at home, but normally I'm playing so much I don't play that much at home, but this has made me want to. So there's a few things I want to just mention and go over on this guitar now I've learnt a bit more about it and I've been using it. Now, the first thing is about Floyd Rose ownership, because I've never had a guitar with a Floyd Rose on it before. I'm going to go over some stuff here that will be very obvious to those of you who have got Floyd Roses, but if you're watching this thinking about getting one of these guitars and maybe haven't had a Floyd Rose on, then this might come in useful. There's a few things that I've learnt about this Floyd Rose since I first got it which I didn't know about them. Now, the first thing is that when you fit the strings into your Floyd Rose, you cut the ball end off. I didn't know that. Let me show you a close-up here. The string goes into there, and that little black square, that little block there, that's tightened up with this screw with an Allen key, and basically that is clamping the end of the string. There's no ball end in there. You cut the ball end off and you clamp it into there. Now, that's the first thing I didn't know. Secondly, this is how you adjust the intonation. That you undo that screw there with the Allen key again, and then you can slide this whole unit backwards and forwards. Now, to the seasoned Floyd Rose user, that's probably old news, but I didn't know that. Now the other thing you can't do is you can't adjust the height of the individual string saddles like you can on a Fender guitar. Now I was really a Fender user, although my previous guitar I was buying this was the 335 there, which is slightly different, and I haven't tinkered with that very much, so I'm not that used to it. But with the Strat and the Telecaster, you're able to adjust the heights of each saddle individually. But this is a bit more like a Gibson, where you've got the 2 screws either side, so you can only kind of adjust the height of the whole bridge. But that does mean that you can't adjust each individual string height. So this brings me on to my second thing, and this is the only bit of tinkering I've done. Now I'm not a great tinkerer when it comes to guitars. I tend to just use them as they are unless they're really annoying me and unplayable. And I've used this for ages, pretty much as it came out of the box, but I've, like you do when you've got things, I have slightly refined it, and I've done some non-invasive tinkering, which means I can't have buggered it up, which is what I'm always worried about doing. And what I've had to do, let me show you again with the close-up. So you can't adjust each individual string height separately without, well, there is a way of doing it. What you have to do is you have to put little shims of metal underneath to raise up the relevant saddles. So I've bought some of those. Now these tiny little thin bits of metal cost me 20 quid for 6 of them. They're from All Parts in the UK. And basically what you have to do is you have to undo that bolt that you would undo for doing the intonation. You can then lift up that end of the saddle, and that, if you can imagine, slips under there. And what I've had to do, I've put 2 under the first string and 1 under the second string. I'm going to put 1 or 2 under there, maybe 1 under there. The reason being, here's another little lesson for those of you who know a lot about guitars. This might be irrelevant, but this is all to do with fretboard radius. If you buy a Floyd Rose to put on a guitar, like an aftermarket one, so you just buy the Floyd Rose, they are set up with a 10-inch radius because they already have some of these shims put in them. If you remove the shims, then they're set up for a 12-inch radius. Now my assumption with this guitar is this bridge, the EVH badged Floyd Rose, is set up for a 12-inch radius, which this neck starts as a 12-inch radius here and ends as a 16-inch radius here. Now let's explain radius. Now the radius of a fretboard is how curved it is. So at this end, because it's 12, it's more curved than at this end because it's 16. The reason being is the radius refers to a 12-inch radius circle, and if you can imagine what the curve is like on a 12-inch radius circle, that's what the curve is on this. And on this guitar it's called a compound radius, so it starts at 12 here, then it flattens out to a 16 here, which means that if you've got a 12-inch radius on the bridge, that the problem I was finding was I could get the first string at the right height down here, but the third string was much higher, and you couldn't make it kind of even. So that's why I've raised up the first 2 strings to make the strings more equal in height, so it means that I can then bring the bridge down where I've added the shims under the first saddle, and it means that the third string is at the correct height as well. So I've had to do that, and there's quite a few people on the internet that have had to do that by the looks of things, but it's made it much nicer to play, much easier to play, certainly up here, because before the third string, well, and the fourth string, which didn't bother me quite so much, but the third string was much higher than the first 2 strings. But other than that, I don't have any complaints with this guitar at all. It's really well made. It's still not the kind of guitar that I could just take and be the only guitar that I'd take on a gig, because it does lend itself to higher gain, heavier stuff, although if you look back over some of my videos I have used it with a clean sound and it is pretty good. And I have to say I probably would get used to doing it, because I struggled with my 335 when I first got it because I wasn't used to the humbuckers, but now that's almost become my go-to for gigs. But I have used this. I'm still on the original set of strings, bizarrely, although I've played it for absolutely hours, but I am going to change them this week. I was waiting to change them when I've put all the shims in and got all that right, and then I'm going to put a fresh set of strings on, which did mean when I took it on a gig last week that I couldn't manage to make it stay in tune, but that's my own fault. So all in all, I'm still very pleased with the guitar, and I would still recommend getting one. I have noticed since they brought this one out, they've now brought out some amazing new colours, and if you look on the EVH Gear website, they've also brought out a star-shaped guitar with just the one humbucker in. They've also brought out some of the Frankie guitars, but not stripes. They brought them out in black, white and red, and they've also, which I have mentioned before, they've got the made in Japan exact clones of the Eddie Van Halen signature version of this. So I do like the look of some of those. I'm resisting at the moment. You can't get them yet, but when they do come out, I'm going to have to resist getting one, because I'm absolutely loving this, and it's made me want to play the guitar again. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope it was useful if you're thinking about buying one of these, or even if you've got one, or even if you're just interested in hearing what they sound like. I did a couple of takes of that track at the start, so here's the take I did before the last one. I preferred the first one, so that's why I put it at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to put this alternate take at the end of the video, and I hope you enjoy that. If you did like the video, please hit like, hit subscribe. I bring out new videos at 7 o'clock UK time every Friday, so I hope to see you next week.